Are you overwhelmed by all the potential liturgical prayers that you could pray every single day? Are you looking for a way to incorporate liturgical living into your life and make it easy and accessible? Well, we've got some solutions for you coming up next with our guest, Kendra Tierney. Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
For those of you guys who don't know, so we're super excited to have Kendra on the show. Kendra Tierney is a wife and a mother of 10 children, no big deal, ranges from newborn to teenager, and an enthusiastic and amateur experimenter in the domestic arts. I would say more than an amateur, but this bio says. She writes the award-winning blog Catholic All Year and is a regular contributor to Blessed Is She Ministries, and in her spare time is the voice of Liturgical Living at Endow Ministries. If you guys, check all of those ministries out. Those are great as well. And she's the author of the Catholic All Year Compendium, and then the book that we're going to talk today, which I'm reading the bio from, is the Catholic All Year Prayer Companion. That goes along with this. Sorry, the light was a little off. So, Kendra, tell us, for our listeners that don't know as much about you, just give a little synopsis of your background. Like, where did you come from, and how did you become the liturgical expert in the church?
Yeah, it's all been rather unexpected. I was baptized Catholic, but didn't grow up with liturgical living traditions in my home. After my husband and I got married, we decided that we really wanted to teach our kids about our faith. And, kids are so inspiring, I think, and convicting on that front that, what I wanted to teach them, I needed to learn myself because I didn't know it. And so as we were looking into the practices of the Catholic faith and trying to learn, all right, when are we supposed to fast? What is Lent supposed to look like? How do I get toddlers through Sunday Mass? Just, trying to do all this research, and we were trying to do the hard stuff. And I think that's really important. And, teach our kids to sit quietly during the rosary and have a meaningful Lent and things like that. But while we were working on that, I realized, I'm kind of presenting only half the picture of our faith, because those sacrifices and those difficult things are really important. But we also need the celebration, and we also need to focus equally on the joy. And I realized there are all these amazing and sometimes hilarious liturgical living traditions that Catholics used to practice in families and in parishes and in communities and in whole countries. And I started realizing that in order to teach my kids the fullness and the truth of the faith, I need to work on both sides of that. And so we started learning about the saints, and we started learning about these prayers and devotions and these traditions that are part of our inheritance as Catholics, and to really make that part of our domestic church.
I think that's such a good point. We have spiritual directors that say in order to fast well, you have to feast well, and that you can't have one without the other. And I think that this whole picture, like that it's both and, not just like, hey, we're going to take away, we're going to do all the hard stuff, but we're not going to do any of the joyful celebration side, is such a disservice to the church, a disservice to our faith, a disservice to our children if we want them to remain Catholic. Like this idea of like, how do we incorporate both? And so I greatly appreciate the resources that you have provided in Liturgical Living. How, as we dive into this new book, how is this different than the original book, the Catholic All Year Compendium?
Yeah, so the Catholic All Year Compendium, well, I should say that they started off as one book, but I even asked my editors at Ignatius Press, I only submit 600-page manuscripts to them. I was like, okay, this is great, but let's do this, but half. And so the Catholic All Year Compendium it ended up being just the history and the stories behind all of the feast days, and how we learned to incorporate liturgical living into our family life. So it really sort of explains the concept of liturgical living and explains where these feast days came from, and a little bit about all of the saints, and a little bit about these stories from the Bible that we're given as as important things that we want to remember every year. Just sort of that idea, and then it has suggestions in it for Bible readings that are associated with feast days, and prayers and different devotions that are associated with months and with saints that promoted those devotions and things like that. And then when people liked the compendium, I said, hey, now how about I put all the rest of this stuff that we cut out in its own book? And that was 600 pages again, because I added a whole bunch of new stuff into it. All right, how about half? And I said, okay, but how about 400 pages? So, but I really wanted all these things in one place, because if if you've ever sat down, let's pray quickly together as a family, and then you're on phones and trying to find the right translation of something, trying to find, and it just ruins the moment. And I check a text message real quick, and it's not as good as paper and a book. And so I always tell people, I put things together that are useful resources for my family, and I hope that they will help other people. And this book, I am so glad that that other people bought the other book, because I want this to sit in my dining room so I can just grab it and just open up to the feast day, and there's the prayers right there.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I loved was in the beginning, you give some background and ideas. And I think one of the things you talked about was your husband working long hours. And yet, like, you want him to be the leader of the family and the leader of the family prayer. But yet it's kind of hard when he like rolls in right at dinner is like starting already because my kids are melting down. And like to have this and be like, hey, it's already bookmarked and here it is. And like, you just read this, and yet like we get to incorporate this into joyful chaos that we have going on, and to have those important prayers.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of Catholic men that I talk to want to step up and be the spiritual lead of the household. They want to help their family grow in faith, to do all of those things. But we've got a lot on our plate, right? Like, I fly airplanes, so like when I come back from a 12-hour day, it's pretty hard to like put together this prayer schedule that our family's going to do. But if Katie just opens the page up and says, hey, could you read this? Could you lead our family in prayer? Like, I am more like, that is so helpful for someone like me. So
and that's really exactly where this book came from, is that exact situation where my husband is such a good man, and he's such a good dad, and he's really, really busy. And he, exactly what you were saying, that dads who either, didn't grow up with with these types of traditions, or are just so busy at work, and they want to be that leader and show, we want our kids to see that our faith isn't something that just happens on Sunday. It's not a mom thing that, your mom sits you down for catechism lessons for homeschool, or because if we want our kids, and I think this is true of sons and daughters both, that they need to see their dads being invested in the faith. Well, not necessarily need to, but it's very beneficial. And this book came from just like what you were saying, that I would, print something out or make suggestion to my husband. And now this, just sits there, and all he has to do is I can say, yeah, there's something in there for today. And the kids get to see their dad being invested in their practice of the faith.
Yeah, I think it's so important to just mention like that this is so helpful for me in that, because my life is chaotic and it's crazy, and to have the responsibility to prepare something for him like is hard. And yet, like, having a resource like this. And then I also want to just hit on, you do write a little bit about a reluctant spouse and how we incorporate this into our family, even if your spouse is reluctant. And so I know we just talked about how like good it is to have a father in that leadership and to live out the faith and to let their children see that, and vice versa with a mom, also important. But then how do we do this if we do have a spouse that doesn't necessarily want to? And so I think that the book answers some of that question as well.
And I would like to encourage our listeners, especially if you're a father out there, liturgical living doesn't doesn't sound, I don't know, to a man that's not like, yeah, like liturgical living, like let's go do it. I guess just more of my spirituality, my demeanor, I could do like the same thing over and over again every day, like, just kind of the small building habits, and I would be totally fine with that. Like that's okay for me. But that's something I've appreciated with Katie, and the beauty of having kids is she's really kind of brought that out through like these books, through the liturgical living. Is I've got to experience the church in a new way. I've got to, our kids are like running around waving palms on Palm Sunday and shouting Hosanna, and like those little things are it's helped me to grow. Whereas I wouldn't naturally just go seeking out liturgical living, but since these guides are there, they've really opened a spiritual door open for me that I would have never really walked through, in a sense.
And I think one of the things that really struck me in this book too is, I think when we hear the word liturgical living is more than just crafts and activities.
Yes.
Like, it is prayer that draws you in to the story of salvation, to the greatest story ever told, and how important that is, and how good this resource is for somebody who maybe doesn't want to do crafts and activities, but like is called to do prayer. Like, we are all called into liturgical prayer.
So what? Yeah. Talk to us about the book. Like, what are some of the prayers that are in there? How is this formatted? Tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, I would say that, crafts and activities and stuff, we do some of that in our homeschool day. We do a lot of food related things, because that's more sort of my comfort zone, more than crafts with kids. But yeah, the burden of those falls more heavily on moms. And if that's not your deal, then you can feel like liturgical living in the home just must not be for you. But, as you said, prayer should be incorporated by all of us. And that's really the focus of this book, to be something that we can just pick up and use on any day without any preparation. That there are prayers in it. There's a section that can be used for daily prayer, broken up into the morning, the Angelus, evening prayers, examination of conscience. So there really are things that you could use in it every single day. And then it covers over 100 feast days during the year, and also all the seasons of the liturgical year. So you can crack it open and look, is there something specific for this day or this season? So there's novenas, and there are particular prayers and Bible readings associated with different days. So it really, with no preparation, with no skills, with no shopping for anything, you can be ready to go. And there was one thing I wanted to touch on too with dads, is that I think our kids don't necessarily see the faith practices that my husband does on a daily basis, because he's not home. So when I go to daily mass, I drag a bunch of kids with me, and they see it. My husband goes to daily mass on his own, and they don't see that. And he, listens to podcasts, and he listens to the daily readings, and he prays the rosary, but they don't see that. And so even though his personal practice of the faith is so important and helps him be a better father and a better husband, but I love that if we can come together at family dinner, which is so important in our home and is really the basis of our family apostolate, is that family dinner, then my kids see my husband's practice of the faith.
Yeah, man, that brings like such a chord. That's so beautiful. And for someone who thinks that 400 pages worth of a prayer guide is too much, I think like the point of it is that there's something for everyone. There is something for every day. And we get a lot of questions, a lot of, where do I start? They feel lost. The Catholic Church can be overwhelming in everything that it has. But I think sometimes we miss the mark in, like, the Catholic Church has set up this beautiful liturgical calendar to bring us in to the prayer life and the seasons. And, there's such a beautiful way to draw us in. And that's what I like about the book, is the fact that it's practical, right? We're busy. We've got 3 tiny saints that are running around that we can never keep the house clean enough. And so it's just like, more and more now, I'm just appreciating the resources that are like, here it is. Like you're doing the best you can. Life is really hard and tiring. So here's a way, dads, moms, to just a small way to grow in holiness.
Yeah. What would you suggest for people who are trying to start learning to live liturgically?
Yeah, the Catholic Church is so full of amazing, I like to call them opportunities and resources. But yeah, we could never, even the greatest saint could never hope to accomplish all the possible devotions and prayers on any one day. So I like to look at the liturgical calendar as a framework, that it gives us a suggestion for, here's we should be praying for the holy souls every single day of the year. Do I? No, I don't necessarily, but I can do it that in November, and I can specifically do it during the Holy Week of the Holy Souls Indulgence. And so, and then it makes sure that I'm doing that every single year, coming back around to it again. My kids are exposed to it again and again. And if we're in a tough season of illness or pregnancy or new baby and things get skipped, then it's not like, oh, I've just abandoned it forever.
Yeah.
It's hey, here it comes again. All right, we missed it last year, but we can come around again and we can do it this year. And it has just been, my oldest is 19 now and my youngest is 1. And these devotions are things that we can all share together, and they can experience them differently over the years. And that's been a really beautiful thing. As far as starting out, I always suggest to people that, start small. Don't try to do everything all at once. Choose devotions to saints that are important to your family. And I always suggest that people start with an inward focus, because I know how much my kids are a motivation and an inspiration to me. So the feast days that we started out celebrating are the name days of the people in our family. And even though those aren't necessarily as important to the universal church as things like solemnities and holy days of obligation, but those are really important to our family. And we want to make sure that we encourage that relationship that our kids would have with their patron saints. So we always start, I tell people to start with what we call the 3 special days. So your name day, your baptism anniversary, and your birthday. And so kids get to be special on that day. And those were the first feast days that we tried to celebrate at home, just with a little bit of a special meal or a dessert and saying some prayers. And in the book, there are prayers that are for a birthday, for a name day, for a baptism day. And so I think that's a great way to start, because it makes kids feel special and it gives you that motivation to actually do something.
Yeah.
I like the fact what you were saying about the liturgical calendar. It kind of takes some of the guilt out of it, because you're like, oh yeah, the Holy Souls in Purgatory, like I forgot all about you, but the church is like, it's okay, like we've got some time to pray for them. No, I think that's really beautiful. Okay, so I have a question. Because you have, kids all the way from teenagers to toddlers. What have you seen in the liturgical calendar? Like how does that work that you can still kind of captivate and corral the toddlers, but like keep the teenagers engaged?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things. And one aspect of it is just kind of a parenting issue where nobody in our family gets to just say, oh, this is lame, I don't want to do this. It's just part of our family culture. And it's easier if you start when they're little, and it's just sort of the expectation. But, we just have the expectation that our kids are going to participate in family activities with a minimum of grumbling. And this is just one of those. And we honestly haven't had a lot of pushback on it. It's something that we enjoy. And I think part of it is that it's associated with getting to have dessert and, fun family activities. And so it's not just, it's not just prayer, although we should appreciate just prayer and devotion. I know even for me, the dessert part is a nice part. And also, as the kids grow older, it's been really fun to see them be able to take more of a leadership role. And, if my husband isn't home, then my oldest son can, take over sort of as the leader of the prayers for that day. And that we really do try to maintain a little bit of a hierarchy, and so that a life of prayer and a life of prayer leadership is aspirational for the little kids.
Yeah.
We don't want to convince them that prayers are something that only little kids do. And so the little kids look up to the big kids and look up to a time when they can be a leader too. And we do have some of our liturgical living activities. We do things like they'll get to put a bean in the bean jar during Lent for sacrifices. And we have a similar thing that we do during Advent with straw for baby Jesus. And so the older kids can award pieces of straw or beans to the little kids. And we do a hiding quarters on Spy Wednesday, which is the day that Judas sold out Jesus. And so the older kids can, do that part and hide the quarters for the little kids. And so they're able to sort of transition into a more adult faith where they're sharing it with their younger siblings.
Man, yeah, it's so beautiful.
Good.
Good.
Oh, we're like totally in the baby phase. So those are the aspirational, we're like, we're
One
the
day.
4-year-old, the 2-year-old, and the newborn. And so that's the end goal. So thank you for that inspiration of what's possible, how we continue to live that out.
Yeah, I want to ask, because I think a lot of your resources touch on maybe like a little bit deeper of a topic of culture in this family culture. And for people who didn't grow up living liturgically or in the Catholic faith, or just or have seen the way that like modern society culture has tried to draw them, I don't know. Can you touch a little bit on like the importance of the Catholic culture in your life, in your family, and how that looks for you guys?
I think it's hugely important in our family. And my oldest is only, well, I guess he's about to turn 19 this month. So I don't feel like I can say, yes, I have all these successful, well-adjusted Catholic adults. I don't. So this is all just an experiment for me too. But what it feels like, what my gut tells me is that we want our kids to understand the truth of our faith and understand Catholic doctrine and why we believe what we believe. That's really important. But also, if we want our kids to stay Catholic, we also want them to realize, that all of these fun yearly parties and associations, those are Catholic things, and those are things that you would walk away from. You're not going to get a devil pinata on the feast of on Michaelmas in any other religion. And and you're not going to get a bonfire for the feast of St. John the Baptist, other places, and that these are really things that we have lost, like Eucharistic processions through the streets. And I think that it happened that the Catholic Church sort of distanced itself from those things in our country for reasonable reasons, for reasons of that people were focused on just the cultural celebrations and not the doctrines and teachings behind them. And for, ecumenical reasons of wanting to focus on the similarities that we have with our Protestant brothers and sisters. But I think that we've given up, we've sacrificed a lot on that, because now being Catholic just sort of feels like one choice among many. And as Catholics, that's not what we believe. And I think that, my focus has been, let's make Catholicism weird again. Let's make it different. Let's make it mean something. And if you're going to walk away from the Catholic Church, you're going to walk away from all the cool, weird stuff that only we have. Yeah. And and while we're at it, the reason that we have a Eucharistic procession on the Feast of Corpus Christi is because we have the real Jesus, and no one else has that. And if we believe that we have the real Jesus, then we put up a yellow tent and we have a pokey gold monstrance and we walk through the streets and we show people this is what we have in the Catholic Church. Come, be part of it.
Oh man,
Oh.
that's so good. And that's so important, right? And I think inspirational for our parents out there who are worried about transmitting the faith onto their children. It's in some ways it seems like a daunting, impossible task, but like you said, I truly believe the way that we do that is through one, our own witness, and two, the culture that you set up. Like that is how you transmit traditions and teachings and beliefs, is through the culture that you set up in your house, in your church, in your parish, all of that.
And I think the idea of that culture involving this liturgical living, to make Catholicism weird again, to have it stand out, to have it be the truth, the way, the only way, this realizing that how we live transmits. Do we truly believe this? Like, do we believe that we have the presence of Christ? Do we believe that we have a communion with the saints? Do we believe that they can intercede for us, that they can be examples for us, that they can have a relationship just as we can have a relationship with the God of the universe? And this idea of this, how do we live this out? And I just thank you for this resource. Thank you for something that I know is going to sit on our dining room table as we incorporate these into breakfast or dinner, depending on when Dad's home, which meal. But the element of just allowing this to be a central part of our day-to-day life.
Yeah, Kendra, where can people go to find out more about all the stuff that you have going on?
CatholicAllYear.com is my website. And so I can be found there. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And the book is available on my website. It's also available from Ignatius Press and wherever books are sold.
Awesome. We will put links for all of that down in the description, so please check them out. And for all of our listeners, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining this conversation with Kendra, for trying and starting to incorporate liturgical living into your lives, into your families, into your prayer. And so know that we are praying for you. If you found value in this, please share it with a friend so that they too can have these resources, like the video and subscribe. Until next time, God bless.